Hi guys. Shh. I know that I'm a blocker for lunch. That's why I will make a quick talk and we'll have a lunch. So, hi everyone. It's an honor to be here and let's make some interaction and make some noise. Thank you. So I just want to know if you have ever seen ReactConf last year. Please raise your hands. Not so many, but okay. There was one feature that we are really waiting for. It's called React Forget. It's a simple stuff that inject use callback, use memo, and memo into your code automatically. Unfortunately, it's only in experimental stuff, and there is no clue when it's going to be in the nearest future. But luckily, I hope that it will be going as soon as possible. So, as we know, when we start to act with React and when we want to make some interactions or subscription model or making async request, it starts to rerun the component. And it goes to state changes, parents component render, context changing, and hooks changes. And also we started to thinking about React memo, and in the latest I will use React memo friends as use callback and use memo. Why do we care about it? Because we want to prevent renders and want to optimize our performance. And for example, when we want to prevent child's component, my advice is to use a callback inside of a parent component and wrap child component with React memo. It will prevent its re-rendering. Also, a good stuff of a pattern when you write your own custom hook and you have use effect with dependencies. And it's also a good tip to use callback for others functions. And if you don't do this, yes hook plugin will call you back. Another stuff when we're talking about use memo, it's always talking about optimization with high calculations and so far and so forth. I found out when I started in the previous project, we have admin applet with lots of columns, and we used React table, and it's the greatest example when inside of library it use memo. As in the simple thing, when you use memo in table, it will do if else, yes, no, and it will check each item. To prevent this, it's covered by use memo to optimize memory leak. So also, we can talk about a context. I have such case when I used props in different components, and this variable changed each time, and the components also re-rendered. How I fixed this task? First one, I can separate this component into two different parts, wrap it with the use memo and React memo, sorry. And another stuff, if it's a really complicated one, you can use memo and to also prevent of its re-rendering. So we just found out that good parts of use memo, and it's really simple to use it in your project. And after thinking about it, I thought that I'm an expert in performance until I found this code. As you can see, there are lots of use callbacks. I don't know what's happening. Okay. There are lots of use callbacks, and if you play, you play to the end. If you want to optimize your code, it's a project. It's a library of React hooks form, and I was only wondering why it's working so fast due to this. And also, I found out that in the interview we are stressed about a solid understanding of use memo and use callback, if they are equivalent or they are not. We started to overusing memo because we think that it should be everywhere. We don't have a solid also understanding of memorization, and we cannot figure it out what is the best practices of it. So, my name is Christina, and I'm working at SoftServe, and now I'm going to dedicate this talk about good and bad parts of using memorization. As a person with a mathematician background, when I have an issue, I started to simplify or approve it. As an example, it's easier to understand how use memo and use callback works when you customize your hook. So what is going to be our first steps? We want to have a plain JavaScript object, which value can be accessed and modified. And also, I don't want to have new reference each time when I invoke functions. As for that, we can use useState for store our object, but it's also can used by useRef. It makes the simple things, and it's it's more readable. But also, I haven't mentioned that my function also compare, like a shallow compare, do not invoke each time when our function is invoked. So, we started to make our own use memo hook. There is two variables which will store current and previous values. Then I will invoke shovel equals, which will compare of it, is it array changes of its items, of its length, and if it's object, it will look through of inner values. If it's everything is okay, it will be returned true and invoke a function which will write our new values and returned it. So we just customize our useRef by using useState. Next step, we understand that useRef is similar to useMemo because writing of our own function shell of compare. Also, we combine useRef with auto update automatically. And what about use callback? Now we can see it's not a surprise for us that use memo is just like a sugar of use callback by wrapping invoking function. And now we can also understand Dan Abramov's tweet about why he's thinking that use callback is the same one with use memo. And also we can all understand the documentation of React without explanations. We did it. But where we get wrong, why we just using use memo everywhere and thinking that it will customize and optimizing our code. It's also have a wrong conclusion when we're reading about it in React documentation that its update can be caused by changes to props or state. But what it's about when we have a component with parent and child component without no props, but it will be rendered without any hesitations. And how can we prevent it? By the previous example, we just can wrap it with React memo or use memo. But as you see before, React memo will be better work here. Also, it's like a simple example where when we use callback, and we hope that it will also prevent re-render, but completely it's not, it's a bad pattern of using it, and you can see it if I removed use callback and call it after our function, it works. As you can see, it will invoke each time and allocate memorization and compare our previous value and current value, which is not so good. And as you can see, it's not so good to use callback with primitive values and sort and array methods such as map, sort, filter, because they have O&N complexity, big O complexity, and it can be used by performance in JavaScript. As an example, I just tried to compare of its performance, and as we used in a previous example of movies filter, and I just want to sort movies by alphabet, and added a function order by and map it. And as you can see, first render will be okay. It's will be less than 0 milliseconds, but second time it will be take longer time for 16 and 5 milliseconds for filtering, and when I started to sorting, it's cost for 45 milliseconds, and it's really tough. It's can kill our performance. Also, another example will be when child will re-render even its value is memorized. As I mentioned before, that if parents component will render, its parents component render, child component will render also, and it's code doesn't care if we wrap it with the use memo. It also will be invoked. And another example of using is it's not so familiar and it's not so useful with useRef. And as an example, as I mentioned before, React table was used use memo, and they rewrite it by useRef, and they just started to monitoring their previous and current value using with a condition of instance ref current is it changed or not. And it's time for refactoring time, as I used a context, and it seems to me that I can refactor it and get rid of memorization and the context. I found out this library with React use, and it was quite simple to use it, and it has more than 22,000 stars, and it's always changing. So I create my own hook with use is system locked. It just make a request to the backend with the helping of Apollo client, and when I get the result, I stored it in line 8 with the systems locked or not, and always try to understand is it changed or not by using as use previous hook method, and returned it and use it as a hof function. Moral of this talk is that most of the situations we can skip React memo's friends. As you can see, we can get rid of use memo with the help of useRef and useState, and also we can last recently used cache functions, and so far and so forth. But my opinion is that you should use callback when in the last stage, when there are no change to write it. And make performance optimizations with responsibility, because optimizations, it can cost lots of your memory and your speed. And you also choose, and also I advise you to skip this optimization and to look for the other stuff of your work. But if you want to improve your performance and you are just passionate about it, I recommend you to use hooks library with use why did you update, to cover all your repository, where in the console it will easily show you where is props changing and when it's rendered. Also, I'm a commit of FIVI days, and next our conference will held on 10th of November 2022, and I invite you to join it. It will be held online, and 10% of buying your tickets will goes to humanitarian missions and trusted people who protect our for trusted volunteers. And stand up with Ukraine, and don't forget about us. And if you want to follow me, you can find me on my nickname and the QR code. Thank you.